Good evening, good morning. Welcome to PSSL 6240, Political Violence and Terrorism. Welcome to week 4. I just want to cover some announcements and then preview the past week and then do a preview for the upcoming week. So first announcement, the Adobe Connect session I think went well on Thursday. For those of you who were there, I think we had a very excellent presentation. Hopefully that gave you some insight into your paper, which is due tomorrow, or due Sunday night, I should say. If you please let me know if it was worth it. If you think it was good, please let me know. If you didn't think it was good, please let me know as well. If there's a more convenient time, please let me know as well. I chose 9 because I think the people on the West Coast have enough time to get home from work. People on the East Coast, it's not too late. Unfortunately, if you're overseas, it's probably not a very convenient time for you. But please let me know, again, if there's any issues with time, bandwidth, if you didn't think it was worthwhile, or if you did think it was worthwhile. So please shoot me a note on that. Paper 1 is due Sunday night, 11:59. I have gotten no requests for extensions, and there will be no extensions. So get that paper to me, again, Sunday, 11:59 p.m. The next session for Adobe Connect is 25 September. Group 2 will be presenting. So you had a pretty good bar for Group 1. And let's see what Group 2 comes up for with Paper 2. Same thing, send those slides to me the day of so I can upload them to the Adobe Connect. And then finally, the lectures. Each presentation, each unit has lectures. View those lectures. Those are very important. They will be very important to your papers. They'll be very, very important for the exams. If you're not viewing those lectures and treating those lectures as if you're in class, that means taking notes and trying to get to the point, then you're wrong, and that's probably the best way to put it. You're not getting what you need to do to get out of the class. And the reason I bring this up is I think there's people not incorporating the lectures into their discussion posts. Makes me think that maybe some people are not looking at the lectures. So please incorporate those into the discussion posts. And there's also hyperlinks in those lectures. Those are meant to be viewed. There are additional videos that would benefit, that are meant to aid the lecture as well. So please click on those hyperlinks as well. That's all for announcements. Just last week, again, good discussions, good commentary. Road to 9/11. The one thing I asked, and I'm not sure got across in the discussion, is there's a difference between the Zakaria and the Road to 9/11 video. Road to 9/11 looks at the long view, goes back to the Crusades and the Mandate period back after the First World War. The Zakaria article, the Why Do They Hate Us article, starts with the 1967 war, the Six-Day War, and looks at the short view of history and says, no, we don't look, you can't look back 100, 200, 1,000 years. You have to look back at what's happened recently. So those are two kind of opposing viewpoints that I want to bring up, or that should be reflected, or should have been reflected in that lecture. So, pick a side. If you think Zakaria is right, get that in your head. If you think the Road to 9/11 is right, that the long view of history explains it, bring that up in your head as well. So just, have those thoughts in your head as we pursue further. And then good comments overall. Just think, what are the factors? I think people have touched on it. Demography, history, economics, culture, religion, all played a factor in the Road to 9/11. What you weigh more important, I saw it in the comments, and I hope some of those comments may have adjusted your thinking patterns, but what you think is most important is what's going to be, is your opinion, but make sure you kind of back that up with analysis and facts. So, but yep, I think we had a good discussion on the Road to 9/11. That pretty much concluded the history, philosophical parts of the course. The rest of the course is more geared towards maybe what you do at work, more geared towards homeland security, intelligence, and more of those practical counterterrorism skills. But I want that intellectual framework to guide the class from here on in. So the next point, terrorism finance. I think the Napolini was pretty good. I think most people captured it. Terrorist organizations are fundraising organizations that occasionally kill people, and that's a good way to put it. And the reason why certain organizations succeed and others fail has a lot to do with their funding stream. What you're going to see next week is Hezbollah was successful, and one of the reasons why it was successful is because they had a state-sponsored funding stream that no matter what they did, they always got that funding. They never had to resort to those ugly things like ransoms and kidnappings and checkpoints and black markets that other terrorist organizations did, which have compromised their capabilities. One thing I want to leave with you is, as we're looking at this ISIS issue, what's going on in Iraq and Syria, ask the question, how are they getting their funding streams? And what impact does it have on the organizational effectiveness? We've seen a lot of funding that's come from what they've captured and the banks that they've captured. We've seen funding come from their black market activities. We've seen funding come from rich people in Qatar and Saudi Arabia providing money to maybe the Syrian resistance, but it ends up in the coffers of ISIS. So think about those funding streams with ISIS and think, are there vulnerabilities there that could be impacted by looking at this group? So that covers week 3. Week 4, WMD two things: terrorist adaptation and WMD terrorism. The readings are a little thick for week 4. They are thick. I kind of violate my rule a little bit because they're very thick. They're very esoteric, sometimes difficult to get through. Even I needed a couple of times to get through them to make sure they were clear to me. One thing I would recommend, particularly when you're talking about the terrorist organizations that are mentioned in the RAND article, as well as the Shinrikyo article, look at the Wikipedia pages for these terrorist organizations. Try and get a little bit of background on them before you actually do the readings. And the one thing you're going to focus particularly on the terrorist adaptation cycle is, it is a long reading, but I'm going to ask you is to focus on one of the terrorist groups. So there's 5 mentioned: ELF, the Earth Liberation Front, Shinrikyo, Hezbollah, IRA, and now the 5th one escapes me. I apologize, but there are 5 terrorist organizations that they focus on. Pick one and focus on that and do the readings or read looking for those adaptation cycles for that terrorist group. Why it adapts, what it's reacting to, why is it successful, why is it not successful, why are certain groups succeed, what are those pivot points, what are those key decisions along the line that forced them to succeed, what were those key decisions for other groups that forced them to fail, and why. So again, those are the organizations you're going to focus on. Pick one and do, again, a deep dive on that group. And the second part is WMD terrorism, and that's where the Shinrikyo CNAS article comes into play. First, the movie Dirty War. If you didn't see my email, it's on YouTube. So hopefully you haven't ordered the DVD yet, you can watch it over the internet. I think I signed that movie because I'm not too keen on movies in this academic environment, but that is literally the best WMD terrorism movie out there, and most realistic, and something you should watch with a careful eye. Look at everything from how the terrorists employ the device, how they smuggle it in, how they acquire it, how the first responders in London respond to a terrorist act. What do they do right? What do they do wrong? That's what should be going through your head when you're watching Dirty War. I'm going to, just one caveat, it is not a family-friendly movie. There's cursing, there's a little bit of nudity. So, don't watch it with young children if you're going to watch it. But it is besides the educational aspects, it is a pretty entertaining flick. And then we go into the readings, and we go into the WMD terrorism lecture. I think this is an important one because what I try and do is myth bust some of the WMD terrorism analysis and reporting you guys might have heard in the news or in mainstream media. I want you to look at this issue with analytical framework, with a strong analytical framework. If you don't, the reason I bring that up is because a politician or a contractor or something can always hit you over the head with WMD terrorism and say it's a threat. It's a threat. We got to do something. We got to spend money. We got to invade countries to stop this threat. Hold on. Let's look at this with a piece of analysis, and that's why I assigned this topic. The big issue again comes from the Iraq War. I grew up knowing all the WMD terrorism aspects of the Iraq War and how I think WMD terrorism was used to scare the crap out of the American people. And I think some of those, actually we know in hindsight, those analytical failures or those analytical points made were obviously wrong. And I think as future practitioners in this field, you should know about WMD terrorism and about what are the potential issues related to it. So I assigned that, and then you'll have an exercise. You'll have a short paper due it again, not at the end of this week, but the end of next week on WMD terrorism. Think of it as an intelligence product or an information product with current events brought in that actually determine, hey, is this WMD incident or WMD intel that we might have, is it a threat or not? And you're asked to interpret that along the way. So that being said, again, keep up the work. We're about almost halfway done with the course, and I look forward to your points on the discussion board.